What's up, everyone? This is Number One Wolf, Legend. How you doing? Uh, so basically, I'm just making a video, and the video is called basically "Bodybuilding Reputation," and it really was kind of hard for me to make kind of a title for this. And basically, I was watching a YouTube video, and it was Shawn Ray. And for those who don't know who Shawn Ray is, he is arguably one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. And that might not even be an argument, honestly, because I mean, on paper and on paper, he might be not the greatest. I mean, on paper, he might be one of the greatest bodybuilders who ever lived. Um, I mean, his resume speaks for himself. Multiple time runner up at Mr. Olympia, more, you know, bodybuilding competitions that I can list that I can even mention. But he is a journalist for, I believe, Muscle Development, I think, or Flex. I think it's Muscle Development magazine. And he's a journalist, and he gets a lot of heat and a lot of hate uh, because of his opinions, because of the way he believes in certain things. Some things that he says I believe, and then some things I don't. We all got our own opinions. But there's still a fine line. And what I mean by is when I was watching his video, he was talking about if he had to create like a fantasy bodybuilding show that was only 212, and he was, naming all the great 212 bodybuilders of all time, and he just was just ranking himself as number one. He truly believes in his mind, of course, that he's the greatest of all time. There was no humility. He was not being humble whatsoever. That's why I didn't, very appreciate. I didn't really care too much on that aspect. He did make good points here and there, but he was saying that he was way better than Flex Lewis. He said Flex Lewis, who is a Mr. Olympia, five-time Mr. Olympian for the 212 class, who's just been unstoppable last several years, and no one seems like he's going to be beat at all. Just he's the smaller version of like Phil Heath, basically. But basically, Shawn was just dinging him on his flat chest, and he couldn't hang with the guys that Shawn hung with, and the Shawn went against back in Shawn's day, back in his heyday. And then he started bad mouthing Lee Priest, who is a great bodybuilder of his own right. He may not have the accolades of Shawn Ray, but he's still probably more popular than Shawn Ray, honestly, for multiple reasons. But um, basically, he was saying that Lee Priest, he was just like picking body parts off him, saying, "Oh, this is weak, this is bad, and this is I'm better this, and I'm better that." And those two always never did like each other. And Lee Priest has went off the record calling him this, calling him that. But basically, what this video is on is, again, my opinion, motivation, and inspiration for you guys, and information. And I'm not saying my belief is the belief to go by, but I do truly have a strong, strong belief that what I'm about to say, I feel like, you know, I'm basically going to be on both sides of the conversation of the issue. So Shawn Ray basically said that he is basically, in his mind, one of the greatest of all time on paper. Because he mentioned that he went against the likes of, all the big names of the 90s and some of the late 80s and some of the early 2000s. And he went up against them and defeated them and said that no one else that he can think of, could even come close to giving him a challenge. And not because of the body types, but because of his placings in different competitions that he competed in against certain big names and ranking and placing higher than those people. So in the bodybuilding world, defeating those guys at one time or another. Well, Samir Banu was the 1983 Mr. Olympia and a phenomenal body. Right now, I'm doing a Dorian Yates type workout regimen. I've been doing it for several weeks, and I love it. It's the best probably bodybuilding workout regimen I probably have ever done. It just feels right. But whenever I feel like I need to change it up, I'm gonna probably do it. I'm gonna probably look up Samir Banu's workouts, and because his body, dude, he was just head to toe complete. And because of that, even Sean Ray said he believes Samir would be a very good runner up. That's sad, dude. He didn't even say that would give him a run for his money or even would beat him. He didn't say anything. He said he would be runner up, and then he just went on and on. I just kept rolling my eyes because at first he came off okay. This, I like where this is going. And then he started getting cocky. He started getting overconfident. And basically was saying that in a way, he was basically saying he was the greatest bodybuilder of all time by saying at his weight, he went up against those big names and defeated those, or came close to defeating those, or ranked so high, like second at Mr. Olympia, defeating such big names and giving people like Dorian Yates, in the 90s, he reigned the 90s, the mid 90s. He was talking about how he gave him a run for his money, and like, here's the thing. So basically, this video, what it's on, is how a great way, I believe, at least way I look at the issue. And this goes in certain aspects in life. This goes in certain aspects with anything you talk about, any kind of issue, from football to soccer to pro wrestling to any sport out there. Listen, on paper, you might be this and you might be that. You might, if we're speaking just bodybuilding terms, on paper, you might defeated this guy and this guy and this big name and this big name, and if you add it all up and add all the accolades up and on paper, and you look at the placings, and if you do the math and then look into the placings, how this year and that year and the competition, then whatever, you get all technical with it, do your research, look back in the history, and just look on paper, on record. Yes, Sean Ray is one of the greatest of all time, and definitely is probably on paper top 5, top 10 greatest bodybuilders of all time. If you talk about accolades, if you talk about on paper, if you talk about on record, same as an MMA fighter who may never won a world championship in his life, but he has a phenomenal record, may not be undefeated, and he may not be very well known, but he's got a great record, and on paper and his stats and his knockout percentages and the time he lasts in the rounds and how good he is at submission, striking, grappling, on paper, his attributes, all that stuff, he might be one of the best ever. Same in football, oh, he's had this many touchdowns and this many sacks and this many runs and this many yards, and on paper, and you might not even know about the guy, but on paper, he's one of the greatest, any sport out there, the true fans out there of any sport, if it's bodybuilding to football to whatever, if you are a hardcore fan, that means you do your research. It's always on your mind. You constantly watch. You constantly look and research upon it. You watch years and years of history of it. If you're a big football fan, you can just bring up a play that happened in like the 1970s, this game or whatever, or you can talk about this guy's high school and college career, like you're so very well detailed, equipped with the knowledge of that particular sport. Like, for example, we're just talking about bodybuilding, you're able, to talk about, oh, he won this show and he became a pro at this year, and he won this and he won that, and he won this competition 3 times in his life, and he won the Ironman, and he won the Arnold Classic, and he was like Sean Ray, he was the second ever Arnold Classic winner ever, and it was taken away from him, and then because he couldn't pass the steroid test, but then he came back and won it again when they weren't testing steroids, blah, blah, blah. Like, see how detailed, see how in-depth all that was? On paper, on record, you do your research, certain people will rank higher than others. For the hardcore fans are the only fans out there that will see that will mention that will analyze and, you know, mention it and put it out there that no, this person's better than this one. If someone said that Brock Lesnar's the best ever, and then you're gonna, if you talk to a hardcore UFC fan, they might say Emelico, or Fedor Emelico. I think I'm saying his last name right. I might be incorrect. They might say no. Brock Lesnar can't even stand toe to toe with Fedor because of the record and because on paper. You get what I'm saying? Hopefully you guys are starting to understand, connect what I'm saying here. You know, on paper, you know, you put today's bodybuilders against yesterday's bodybuilders, you know, it's like on paper, oh, there's no way they could match. There's no way that they could ever compete against. There's no way that they would defeat them. You know, if you had a Flex Lewis of today went against a Sean Ray, and if you went by records and you went by on paper stuff, on paper, tell of the tape type stuff, Sean Ray should win on paper. And that goes with any sport on paper. Like, but, huge but. And for all your perverted minds out there, no, not huge but. The word, not the image. The difference is those hardcore fans of any sport out there, I don't care what it is, if it's from bodybuilding to football, any sport, the soccer to wrestling, any sport, the tennis to golf, to any sport, if you're a hardcore fan, here's the fact and the reality is there's a smaller percentage and amount of people that are hardcore fans than the mainstream majority of people. And what I mean is, for example, the Super Bowl. There are hardcore football fans who treat the Super Bowl like a holiday, and they could bring up different plays of different Super Bowls, particularly on the very play, the very catch, the time, all that stuff. They're very detailed, they're very knowledgeable of it, you know, and they treat it like it's this big event. And then you got the majority mainstream fans who they might just watch it for the commercials, and they might actually like football, but they only watch it because it's in the mainstream, and they're like, well, you know, if everyone else is watching, I might as well watch it too. And heck, they might no, I like this team, and because it's my hometown team, and this is my only team that I like. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying, where I'm going at with this? If you don't understand that, then how about this? Think of, for example, like, for the bodybuilding people, I'm going to stick on bodybuilding because that's easier for me to describe. And hopefully maybe you guys can kind of do a comparison. On paper, people will mention the names of Samir Banu, Sean Ray, Kevin Leroney, Dexter Jackson, Sean Roden, Rolly Winkler, Marcus Rule, maybe, Rich Gaspari, I mean, all the like names. I guarantee most of those names that I mentioned you don't even know. But to the hardcore bodybuilding fans, they're some of the greatest names in the history of bodybuilding. They're the Mount Rushmores to certain people. To the hardcore fans, they're the Mount Rushmore faces of bodybuilding. They're the trailblazers. They're the end all be all names. They're the top of the top list of names on paper. What I mean and what I've been talking about, what I'm trying to explain, is the main majority of people, the mainstream people, the main media people, the mainstream people, For example, I know I keep going different examples, but music. Mainstream, you turn on the radio, you're going to hear mainstream music. For example, you're going to probably hear Nicki Minaj. You're probably going to, all of it's crap and evil, but I'm just trying to get an example. You're going to hear, Eminem. You're going to hear Florida Georgia Line. You get what I'm saying? But for those hardcore fans in each genre, for rap, people might think of Nas. I don't think, probably at their time they might be mainstream, but not anymore. Or for country, they might think of I don't know, freaking Roy Orbison, if I'm saying his last name right. He's an old-timey country singer, but not mainstream. On paper, though, those people in certain people's minds would be better on paper, What I'm trying to get at is, in the mainstream, you hear the same names and the same people and more of a reputation, more of a popularity than other people. So in bodybuilding, you're not going to hear names of Samir Banu. You're not going to hear Shawn Ray. You're not going to hear Lee Priest. You're not going to hear, maybe Kevin Levrone because of what he's been doing lately. But you're not going to hear these names a lot. If you're a hardcore fan, you're going to hear them all the time because you're a hardcore fan and you do your research, you watch the videos, your entire life consists around that particular sport, and in this situation, this conversation about bodybuilding. But for the mainstream bodybuilder lifters, for those who are new into the sport or new into going to the gym or just, they got a pair of lifting gloves, they went to Walmart, bought some whey protein, got some C4, you've seen the Facebook posts, and, they might look up a workout here and there, and the names that come up, and before I mention those names, the mainstream names, or those people who might be actually been working out for quite some time, but they have like a different mindset. They don't care about the history of the bodybuilding. They only care about either just themselves or how many reps and this, or they want to be as big as this guy, and they heard about this guy. They want to be just like this guy or be as big and muscular as this guy. Most mainstream names that you hear is Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, Dorian Yates, maybe a little bit of Lee Haney, maybe, but that's still even hardcore fans when it comes to Lee Haney. That's a different conversation of its own too. Jay Cutler, Phil Heath, that's still kind of your hardcore fan because the bodybuilding's not, the most popular of sports. But for those who are in bodybuilding, those are the names that you're going to hear first. Those are the workouts and the images on Google that you're going to see first. That's the first you're going to see when it comes to working out. So what I'm trying to get at is there's two different types of people. Mainstream media, they kind of just care about what the big picture is. They don't go in detail and try to find the foundation and the trailblazers and the history of it. They just look at the big picture and enjoy it how it is. They don't care about how the big picture became the big picture. They don't care about all the details on how the big picture became to be. You get what I'm saying? And the hardcore fans are those who will go all the way into detail. They will research many years and years of workouts and history and accolades and stuff like that, and they'll actually create their own favorite type of bodybuilder and their favorite type of workout and their favorite type of muscle part and exercise and their favorite Mr. Olympia and then their favorite competition. And like, they get so wrapped up because that's what they love. And when you love something so much, you want to be around it and know as much as you can about it because you love everything about it, because it's your love, it's your passion. But for those who just have it's a hobby, or I like it, or, I just do it because my friend does it, or I just do it because I just want to be in shape for the new year or for summer. The mainstream people, the names that you're going to hear first is Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, stuff like that. So what I'm trying to get at is Shawn Ray wants to say that on paper and all this stuff, and I don't think he said the two words on paper, but I am. On paper, he wants to say that he's one of the greatest of all time. There's no argument about that, but I'm a hardcore fan. But my argument is against him, and not necessarily an argument, it's just a statement really, is on paper, yes, Shawn Ray is one of the greatest of all time. But in the mainstream people, do you ever hear the name Shawn Ray? No. For the mainstream, the most majority, 90-80% of people who go to any gym, any Planet Fitness, any YMCA, and even a Gold's Gym, anything, you're not going to hear Shawn Ray. You're not going to hear, maybe I shouldn't have said Gold's Gym. I should have said more like corporate gyms like LA Fitness, and, I know Gold's Gym is, my bad, corporate. But they have like posters and they have like pictures of the famous bodybuilders, and they're really meant for the hardcore bodybuilding people out there. It's the mecca, it's the main. But what I'm trying to get is like LA Fitnesses, Next Level Fitnesses, freaking Snap Fitnesses, Planet Fitness. You get what I'm getting at? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at now? The mainstream people, the people who watch the Super Bowl just to make an excuse to make a holiday, not because they really care about football. It's just an excuse to say, oh yeah, I'm watching the Super Bowl today, wonder what commercial is going to come on, that's cool, or if a soccer game gets a lot of popularity in media, they might turn on to watch it, might become something, but for those in bodybuilding, that just want to lift better, they're going to hear names here and there. And the names that they're going to hear is Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when you think of a muscular person, the first names that you think of, Ronnie Coleman or Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you've been around the fitness world for quite some time, but you're not really the crazy, it's more still like a really great hobby that you love so much. It's not really a lifestyle, it's just a hobby. Like I said, those are the names that you're going to hear all the time, because they cross that mainstream. They cross from being in a certain group in the world into the mainstream, and when you do that, it's an accomplishment like no other. Like in pro wrestling, I can mention names of Heath Slater or Lou Thesz or Spanky or Jacqueline or JBL. You're not going to hear those names. But first, if a random person came up to you, even if you don't even have to like pro wrestling, professional wrestling, first thing you're going to think of is WWE. Second thing you're going to think of, oh, yeah, you're talking about like John Cena and stuff, or oh yeah, like Hulk Hogan, or oh yeah, like Rey Mysterio, or The Undertaker. You're not gonna hear. You're gonna hear those names because they went from the hardcore fans, and they went from that atmosphere, that type of reputation, into the reputation of mainstream. And that, when if you want to go into sports and if you want to make a name for yourself, that has got to be the goal. It don't matter what Sean Ray says, how many accolades he won. It don't matter how many shows that he won. It don't matter how many times he came second in the Mr. Olympia. There's some of the greatest bodybuilders whoever, God ever created has been second place on Mr. Olympia. Some say the face of bodybuilding in today's era, Kai Green, and the top place he ever got Mr. Olympia was second place. So what I'm trying to get at is, it don't matter. From second place at Mr. Olympia, because Mr. Olympia is the biggest bodybuilding show that you can do. From second place, and anything below second place, anything below first place, it don't matter. You're only going to be so as good and as great and as big of a reputation as known as to those hardcore fans. That's it. That's how far you're going to go. That's how far it's going to be. I'm sorry to tell you that. That's just a fact. That's just how our society is. If you don't win the Super Bowl world champion, if you don't win the world heavyweight title, if you don't win the Mr. Olympia, if you don't win the World Cup, if you don't win the World Series, anyone that lost or loses or second place, third place, or anything below first, you get stripped out of the mainstream and kind of become part of history, but only to those who care so much to look back at that history. But for those who are only caring, and most majority, 90% of people who the mainstream people only care about what is present and what is gonna happen. And if whoever the champs are, whoever the champions are, that's all the people know about. They're only going to hear about Ronnie Coleman. They're only going to hear about Arnold Schwarzenegger because they went into mainstream, because everybody knows about him. Because they created a name and a legacy that not only surpassed the championship and the sport itself, but, they won the big title multiple times. They won, you don't think of the Jaguars in the same conversation as you think of, the New England Patriots. Maybe I shouldn't say like Oakland Raiders. You don't mention Oakland Raiders with New England Patriots in the same conversation. You're going to mention, Seahawks or Steelers or something like that, or college football. You're not going to mention any other freaking school, really. You're going to mention the names of Michigan, Ohio State. You're not going to hear any other really school. You're not going to hear any, get what I'm saying now? When Sammy Sosa, in baseball, you're not going to hear people talk about Brandon Frazier, They're not going to say that. They're going to be talking about, Babe Ruths and Pete Roses, When you talk about football, when you talk about Deion Sanders or Barry Sanders or Bo Jackson, you're not going to talk about Andy Dalton or I'm not really good at football, but you're not going to talk about smaller names. That's sad to say that. I don't like saying that stuff, but that's just the reality of how our society works. So for people like Sean Ray out there who care about the on-paper thing, that is great. That is awesome, because that makes you feel like that you're worth something. And I'm not telling you you're not. And before I get into the main purpose why I made this video, because it's going on 30 minutes. I need to hurry it up. Listen, that's awesome if you believe that. That's great. If that's what you have to keep you going is being technical and making excuses why you didn't get first place and why you never held the world title or Mr. Olympia title, whatever, the main big prize, why you never held it. But on record, if you added all those up, it's equivalent or better than the big title, but no one's never heard of you. And you try to make yourself relevant by making this long list of accolades that you made that no one's ever heard of, only hardcore fans ever heard of. And you're constantly in frustration and you're constantly mad at yourself when you look in the mirror because you never could achieve the big thing. And here's the thing. For those people like Shawn Ray who get caught up in the cockiness and they actually look in the mirror and they can't even accept happiness. And they might be happy with themselves. They might actually enjoy being arrogant and cocky. But here's the thing. No matter what, for those people who do look in the mirror and they're like, man, they're frustrated, they're mad at themselves, but they have to make every excuse in the world to say, oh, well, if I done this, I would have won, or it was politics, or this and that. Heck, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I was one of those people. I used to say politics, this and that. But you know what? Here is the fact and reality of it all. It don't matter what sport you play. It don't matter what thing you do. It don't matter a single bit in anything you do. If you decide to be a boxer, if you decide to be a football player, if you decide to be a soccer player, if you decide to be a bodybuilder, if you decide to do any of that and go into the sport and go after the big championship title, it don't matter if you win or lose and what placings and how many times you win and how many times you lose and anything on paper or anything in mainstream. The only thing that matters is you are special. You may never be in a sport. You may have no genetics, or you might have all genetics and you might want everything. Here is the fact of the matter is you are special and you are loved. Every single one of you that is watching this and every single one of you in this God-created world. You know why? Because Jesus Christ knows you are special. Because Jesus Christ loves you. You are special. You are a world champion. You are Mr. Olympia. You are a Super Bowl winner. You are a World Cup winner. You are a World Series winner. You are a champion. You are a great and once in a lifetime person. You are a Mount Rushmore type of person. You are a history making person. You are a great human being because Jesus loves you. You are great to Jesus. And that is the only thing that matters because God created you. God created all of us. And at the end of the day, when it's time and God says it's time to come home, that's all that matters. Because it don't matter if you have $1,000,000 and you're a world champion winner, or if you have no money and you're hanging on to the past, it don't matter. Let go of the sadness, let go of the cockiness, let go of all the materialistic things that are creating and making you into what you're not, and letting it chain you and bound you up, and become loose and know that not only Jesus loves you, but you are not only a world champion in Jesus' eyes, but you are special. There is no accolades. There's no long list of accolades, and no thing in the history of ever could ever compare to the fact and to the one huge triumph that God, Jesus Christ, gave his soul, gave his heart, gave his life for you to have salvation, to be saved. God, Jesus, loves you. I want you to know that. No matter what sports you play, it don't matter about how big your reputation is. reputation that matters is the reputation to God and how you were worshiping, serving, and loving the Lord. Because He loves you at such an extreme rate. He is within you. He has called you. He lives inside each and one of us. And He loves you so much, to such a great degree, that every single second, every single day, no matter your positioning and setting in this world, no matter what, you are the biggest world champion, you have the greatest reputation, and you are special, and you are great in the eyes of the Lord. Thank you, everybody. Please subscribe. Please hit that bell. Have a blessed day. Please like, comment, share. And I hope all of you have a God blessed day. It's Sunday. And if this video comes up today, just give it a try. For those who don't go to church, give it a try. God's calling for you. Jesus is calling for you. You are great.